Coming up on The Returned.
I'm talking to God about dying. I think I might be leaving. As I lay there talking to God, and I'm aware that all I think about is my husband, my pets, my horses, the people. And I thought about what it would be like if I left. And all of a sudden, I just left my body.
Hi, and welcome to The Returned. The truth always follows you back. Hi, and welcome to The Returned, a place where we share near-death stories, out-of-body experiences, spiritual awakenings, signs from spirit, and the journeys of healers and lightworkers from around the world. Today, we sit with Hertha Lund, an overachiever shaped by an abusive past whose burnout led to a near-death experience that changed everything. Hertha, welcome to The Return.
I'm so happy to be with you here today and to have this talk, MJ. It's so important.
Yes, it surely is. Thank you so much. Before we get to the heart of the conversation, I really like to ground the audience in who you were. So, who or what your life looked like leading up to this, and also did religion or spirituality play a role in your life at that time?
That's a big question. So,
It sure is.
to begin with, I'm going to start at the beginning and work upwards.
Mhm.
And I grew up on a ranch in Montana, and I always loved horses and grew up in like big country. I mean, like country, they're called the Missouri River Breaks, where if you don't feel comfortable with yourself, the landscape is so huge and the sky is so high that, you'd feel like the only safety you have is to have it inside because there's so much of Mother Earth around you that's so big, and again, everything is so expansive. So I grew up there. I thought I had an idyllic life. I did in a way, and that's because I loved horses and I loved being outside. I also used my love for horses and being outside to get away from my mom, who really didn't have the mom tools. And in fact, she had her own pain that she didn't deal with, and I got the brunt of that being the oldest daughter. And I'll go into that more. So there was abuse there, and then I call it the twin towers of my childhood abuse. I was sexually abused by the neighbor boy, a teenager, at 5. And I didn't dare tell my mom because she would kill him. She would also blame it on, make it about herself. And she would also kind of disown me. So all of that was untenable. Even as a little 5-year-old, I wasn't going to go down any of those paths. So I kept it all in. And that's when my whole defend creating defenses, and that my mom was an alcoholic. I could have been an alcoholic, but I chose success, achieving instead. And so in high school, I was a state champion of 2 sports the same year, both rodeo and basketball. I was a national contender. I went to college. I was a pre-vet, pre-med student, and I played 2 varsity sports, basketball and rodeo. So there was nothing in my mind that I couldn't do, and I would push myself to the nth degree, and that became my addiction. Obviously, it was a healthier one than some of the other ones I could have chosen, but ultimately it did lead to me getting ill. During college, we lost our family ranch, which was of all the traumas I've had, that's the time where I lost time and space. I literally shut down because meant so much to our family. And so I went to horseshoeing school, and I am a horseshoer and a blacksmith, and I did that type of physical hard work as a way to pay for college. I had to take time off from college to work several jobs. I also worked as a bartender at night. I worked during the day, and then I would save up enough money to go to college. I did not finish my degree. I'm 1/4 shy of a BS in animal science that would have allowed me to apply to med school or vet school because I had all my science done. I took time off and managed a ranch, and it happened to be a spiritual organization, and I managed their ranch. And from there, I had a spiritual prompting that my path was to go to the East Coast, and I did. And I studied journalism school at Temple in Philadelphia. I had started writing about issues, and I thought that my, it's kind of, well, I'll just share it with you. I thought that other people were trying to tell us out west how to do things, and they really didn't know what they were talking about. And I wanted to share with them how kind of the issues, some of the environmental issues, and what it meant to grow up on a ranch and to be uh, somebody who's embedded in the culture. And so I decided I would go to school on the East Coast so I understood how they thought, and I would be able to have a conversation with them rather than, what I had observed as just, warring ideas. So I got a journalism degree from Temple. From there, I worked as a freelance writer for a few years, and then I was hired and I covered Congress as a journalist. And I did that, and I covered the United States Supreme Court. And while covering one of those cases, I decided I wanted to be an attorney. So I packed up from DC, moved back to Montana, went to law school. And after law school, I moved back to DC and clerked for the Chief Judge of the United States Court of Federal Claims, which is a really, very big job and an important one. And I loved it. And since then, I've been an attorney for 31 years. So being an attorney fit my defenses to the nth degree. I mean, we're tough. We just work no matter what. And so it was a perfect way for me to avoid ever feeling or dealing with those things inside of me that I was pushing down by keeping moving. And it all worked well until about 11 years ago. And during that year, I had having pain in my chest. And the pain got worse and worse. In fact, I even had one trip where the pain was so bad one day that I called 911. They had me take aspirin, and I sat by the door so that they could come and get me because they thought I was having a heart attack. I didn't have a heart attack. It wasn't inner heart issues. I had inflammation in the sac around my heart. It's called pericarditis. And it was very hard to diagnose. And once they diagnosed, it was very hard to treat. They don't know what causes it, so they don't know what to do to fix it. So it got worse and worse over the year. By the time I was hospitalized, had it for the last year and in and out of the emergency room, and then I had multiple issues in my chest. So that was, you know, I was a top-notch litigator. I had my own law firm and married to a rancher, doing multiple things, but I all of a sudden couldn't hold it together anymore. So that is the kind of the place where lightning struck and my change occurred. So I think I answered your question.
You absolutely did. Wow. What a life you've had, hey?
Yeah.
Wow. That's in like a short time telling us too. I'm sure there's a lot more that we're not hearing. So before we get to the part where you actually have the near death experience, could you tell us what was going on that day? And did you have any indication that something more was happening or showing you?
Now I need to back up a little bit because when I was
Sure.
23 and I was rodeoing for and the college rodeo team, that I had a similar, not quite as intense near death experience where I was sick and I had a choice to make. And that kind of led up. I'd had prior experience with this experience. And that one was I was out riding, exercising my horse for the rodeo horse. And during the ride, something in my lower right part of my abdomen, something snapped. I was like, geez, it made me sick, nauseous. I got shocky. I didn't know what it was. And remember, I'm a tough cowgirl, so it took me a while to, do anything. But finally, I was sharing a house with my twin brother, and I said, I think you have to take me to the student medical center. And I'd had a ruptured cyst. And by the time I went, I'd waited too long. I had a pretty good infection going, and so they gave me a whole bunch of antibiotics. But that's what happened on the outer. On the inner, instead of going to the doctor, and it was around a holiday, I chose not to go home because I didn't want to deal with my mom. And I was staying in a house that the previous occupants, somebody had committed suicide. And so I'm there by myself, and I'm like thinking, I don't like it here. I don't want to stay. and I'm sick. And I knew that, I could leave. And then I realized that I wasn't done. And I talked to God and I said, okay, show me what I'm doing wrong. Why don't I don't like it. I don't like what's happening here. I don't like how people treat each other. I don't like, I was pretty hardened to the whole process of life. And note, I was carrying all the trauma, which created how I perceive life and experience life. And, and I got this message. I get messages. It's almost like from behind me, but also through me, in me. And it was like, well, I said, I'm doing the best I can. And he said, well, you're only supposed to love who I tell you to love. And I was like, really? There's a choice? We don't have to love everyone? It was like, I was 23. It was mind blowing. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll step back. And I decided to try it a new way. And I also made a resolution to try to follow my spirituality. Up until then, I was pretty much on a runaway from anything of my inner direction. And I was, at that age, I was still probably drinking too much. I never fell over the slide to be an alcoholic. I guarantee you I was trending in that direction. And so at this time in my life, I decided I wanted to be more spiritual. So they ended up finding out what happened physically, and I didn't, they caught it before it could end up being an infection throughout my abdomen there. And so that ended up being okay. I made it through that one, and I learned something, and I changed how I lived. So the one when I was 50 or 11 years ago, 52, 51, somewhere in there, I knew I was sick. And I could right from this is actually a good place to start the story if you want me just to share it from here. So I've been in and out of the hospital, for in and out of the emergency room in the hospital, several different hospitals for the last year. It had gotten so bad that my husband was taking me in. They were going to check my heart. And when we were traveling in the car, the vibration from the car, I couldn't hardly stand the pain. Now I had chronic pain for decades because of the unprocessed pain stuck in my body. So I'd had a lot of pain, but this pain was so much that I was actually moaning when we were driving down the road. It was, I had systemic inflammation throughout my whole being. And we got to a hotel and we're going to meet with the heart doctor early in the morning. And I realized it's like, I might be septic. And instead of waking up my husband and telling me he should take me in, I decided to wait till morning. I look back at this and I'm like, there were so many parts of me that knew what was going on, but really couldn't take the step to help myself because I was worried about someone else. Anyhow, we go to the heart doctor and I start crying. I'm still in all this pain and I know I'm sick. I know my body is possibly not going to continue. And I tell her, I said, I think the doctor should admit me to the emergency room. And she said, why? And I told her why. And he comes in and he looks at me and he does some tests and he says, I'm going to admit you into the emergency room. So we go into the emergency room and I'm there and they wanted to give me prednisone, a high dose of steroids. I said no. And I knew enough for whatever reason, I knew enough about medicine and my own internal direction. I knew that wouldn't help me and it might mask what was going on. And at this point, I was pretty dedicated. I wanted to figure out a way to live. I'm still hovering about whether or not I want to be here, but I'm not just going to I'm not going to take something that I don't think helps me. So we found, and I still had my wits about me to where the doctors would actually, for the 7 days that I was hospitalized, there would be 4 or 5 specialists that would come into my room and talk to me because they needed my awareness and my background of my complicated past, medically, not just emotionally, to be able to understand what was happening. And so they put me on a floor that was in between ICU and the regular floor. It's where if you have somebody has heart surgery, they go to this floor. And so I'm there with all those people. Well, at night, people would code and die. And this happened several times and I witnessed it. And one night I'm laying there talking to God and my body hurt so bad that my CRP, which is a measurement of inflammation, was 187. Doctors get nervous if it's more than 7. So doctors would come and look at me because they'd never seen anybody alive with that much inflammation. And so I'm laying there talking to God and it's like, I thought, well, I could die. And it's like, "Well, yes, you could." And I'm like, "Hmm." And I thought about it. I said, "I don't really like it here." And at that time, I'm not proud of this, but I said, "Well, it's been a shit show." And, I stayed with it, and I stayed in this conversation, and I was like I kind of stepped back and observed this. I thought, "It's true." I am not thinking about the saddles I won, the state championships, the cases I won, all that hard work I did to put myself through law school and to have a law firm and, shoeing horses, none of that. All I'm thinking about is I'm talking to God about dying, and I think I might be leaving. I really don't think it's dying now, by the way. I think I was more alive out of my body, which I'll get to in a minute, than I am here. So this whole thing that we call it death, it's not really an accurate name. So as I lay there talking to God, and I'm aware that all I think about is God and who and what I love. I thought about my husband. I thought about my pets. I thought about my horses. I thought about the people, and I thought about what it would be like if I left. And I'm like, well, I love them. The love was very strong. So now I'm in a consciousness of love, nothing else. And all of a sudden, from this place of consciousness of love, I just left my body. I was in this white and gold tube of shimmery light. It was bigger than you can comprehend with the human consciousness. It was, beyond time and space. And I'm in this cylinder, and I just go up, up, up. And pretty soon I'm high in the upper atmosphere. I'm walking in the Milky Way. I feel translucent, warm, light, one with everything. Somebody asked me, "Did you see God?" And I was like, God was inside me. It's, all there was God. And as I feel this, I feel like I'm a little 4-year-old running to my heavenly parents' lap. I'm so excited. I feel 100% loved, no sense of unworthiness. And I'm just, it's like I'm literally in heaven. The consciousness of heaven is more of a consciousness that I experience than a place. And as I'm in this place, and then I realize it's like I'm not done yet. And I'm like, oh, and I realize I have a nanosecond to go within, and I go deep within, and I actually felt into my heart and my gut, which is very interesting to me. And I decided, just like that, I promised God, I said, I'll do whatever it takes to get whole and to get into my body. I had no idea for sure in my outer mind why I made that promise. But as soon as I made that promise, I just fell from high out of the upper atmosphere, down that tube of light, and I just came right back into my body. Thud, thunk. And it was awful. I felt like I was crawling into a dead elk carcass laying on the interstate. I mean, I come from this place of total freedom, oneness with light, unbounded, it was just so nice. And now I'm back in my physical body, which is very, very sick. And literally, it just felt heavy and dead. And so I was granted the ability to come back. I was not granted instantaneous healing. And since that time, I've been keeping my promise to do whatever it took to heal. And the first thing I had to do happened when I was in the hospital. I got the inner wisdom that I, asked, and the first thing I had to do was learn how to sleep. I hadn't slept for 20 or 30 years because of chronic pain. And so I went to work on that immediately. Even though I was in the hospital, I try to do things more naturally and more internally. And so I don't like having to take medication, but I actually took sleep medication for a while because I told God I would do whatever it took. And so I was earnest, and it took me 2 years of, at first I took medication, then I took natural supplements, I did sleep hygiene, and it took me 2 years to retrain my nervous system and my body and my habits to be able to sleep. And one morning I wake up and I felt my chest. And I told my husband, I said, I'm a championship sleeper now. And he said, yes, you are. So that is my near-death experience. And the time since then, I've been keeping my promise to do whatever it took to heal. And I can say that at I'm 63, and at 63, I feel better than I have probably since I was a teenager. I no longer have chronic pain. I have a freedom, sense of way I exist in the world, and I am healthier than I've ever been. After that experience, I did have to go back to the doctors because they had to check my heart and lungs. They never did diagnose what caused it. I was gonna go to the Mayo Clinic, and my friend who's a doctor said they're gonna "You had good doctors. They're gonna do the same thing, and you're gonna another couple $100,000." And I thought, "Well, I don't wanna do that." And what we did find out as part of the outer reason for my inflammation was that, the house at the ranch was moldy, and that I'm one of the genetic people. I have my genetically, I cannot break down mold. It turns into a biotoxin inside me. And so that was part of the outer reason. And I think the outer reason combined with the inner reason, the unprocessed pain from my childhood trauma, those together created the atmosphere where I could have so much systemic inflammation. And it was around my heart and lungs because that's where my biggest wound was. My soul didn't want to be here because I couldn't believe how people would, you know, who strangles? My mom strangled me when I was 4 or 5 because I couldn't find my shoes. Who does that? I mean, who abuses little girls? And then how people, I worked in Congress, who all the issues, how we talk to each other about policy. And so my greatest wound was my heart. And I had so much grief and despair from experiencing living in the world the way it was that that's where my physical healing occurred also.
What a wake up moment. Unbelievable. You know, my first question is you've kind of answered it. Why do you think this had to happen to you?
Right. And I think the why that you're asking me, it could be the near death experience, but I think it goes back further. Why did I have trauma? And I don't think it's ever okay to justify anyone abusing someone else. I'm not saying that. I am saying that my soul needed that the difficulty with my mom because of my own whatever was going on, what I came in this lifetime to resolve. Now, I do think she overperformed. I think she went for the Emmy. She could have just been bad. She didn't have to be, she got carried away with her implementation. But I needed that for my soul. And again, I don't excuse her, but I also don't judge her. She had her own problems that she didn't settle. I mean, it's a paradox. She was not a great mom, and without that, I wouldn't be who I am today. Both can be true. They don't cancel each other out. And so I needed that. The sexual abuse, I'm not sure I needed that. I'm pretty sure I didn't. So that one's one that, I think that bad stuff happens, can happen when we're on earth. And I did talk to that. I did talk to him when I was going through the healing, and I confronted him and I said, I remember what happened. And he said, really? I don't remember that. I said, I don't know if you're telling me the truth or not, but if you've blacked it out, and I said, I hope you don't abuse anyone else. So I did come clean with him, and I've released him. I don't know what, I don't know what else I can do. I no longer have an energetic attachment to him because I worked through my stuff, and I don't condone what he does. And I hope he never carried it on ever again, but we don't know. Um, and then for the near death experiences, I am certain that I was so dedicated to, and I am tough and I am bullheaded, I'm tenacious, to never feeling those things that I thought would kill me, that the only way I would go there is if I went through this experience and I made that promise. And I'm also pretty certain that, God, and I think we have mentors and others who've already passed over that when we leave here, we just don't go to a place that's void of people that we know. I think those that sponsor my live stream and are my teachers, I think that if I hadn't made the turn, I would have been taken home because I wasn't fulfilling my reason for being. There comes a time where it's, better to bring somebody back and get a fresh start rather than continue. And so I think that, and I would not have made this decision. I would have not have made the decision to face my fears, my terror, the memories from my childhood, the pain, all of that was stuck there. But for me having my number one value is integrity. So when I promised God, I just simply had to do it. And so I've been very earnest. And so I do believe that's why that I needed I needed it to be able to get a reset and to have an opportunity to fulfill my reason for this life rather than avoid it because I did not want to feel the pain, the terror, the despair.
I was also wondering, uh, just because of the type of woman you are, do you think, or have you ever thought, that you may needed to have been slowed down? Because it sounds to me like you were really a go getter.
That's very keen observation and intuition and insight. Yes, I needed to slow down, and I would not have slowed down unless I was in that hospital bed, and when I left the hospital, I remember it was weeks and months that I had to spend, bringing my body back. I mean, it was so slow, the healing at first. I'd lay on the couch and I'd try to work. I have no idea how I didn't lose my law firm. I did have other people working for me, but I mean, I have a memory of just I couldn't do anything forever. It's kinda like when you buy a house, if you pay the mortgage, at first, you pay only, the interest payments. I mean, for a lot of what I did at healing at first really showed no indication. I was just kind of turning the corner on what was going on in my body and the energy and finding ways and avenues to heal it with multiple inputs. Then finally, and it took years, then all of a sudden, all that work I spent 30,000 at least a year in cash to heal. Now, thank goodness I had that money, but my experience was that if insurance would pay for it, probably wouldn't heal me and it might kill me. And s yeah, so to me, I did modern medicine did help me and it kept me alive, but there's my belief now is that the only way we can truly heal, and sometimes it plays a role, is if we do the inner work and we find the different ways for our systems, our body to be able to get new habits, but it also is our emotions, it's our spiritual life, it's a physical body, and it's our mental body. It's all 4 lower bodies. And so I spent and when I thought about spending the 30,000, it's like, "Well, you're not gonna have any money to retire." And I'm like, "Well, if I'm dead, I won't need it." So I invested in myself to be here, and yes, it did slow me down, and I would have not done the deep inner work unless I had to be slowed down. You are absolutely
Love that.
correct. Yeah.
I love that because I really like to see the transformation in people. So my next kind of stems back. I go back just a little bit because I like to cover the fear. So when you were out of your body, up the tube, I think you called it. Um, what was that like? So was that at all like? Did you have any fear?
No fear. I mean, I just now even you asked me that question, I got a download because I remembered how it felt. It's just a feeling of oneness with light and safety and, being loved and being worthy, and it's beyond the comprehension I could have without the experience because it's just all throughout my cells. I mean, literally, as you asked me that question, I can now feel everything light up in my being, and no, there was no fear, and in fact, I can't even if I am in that state of being, I can hear I can say the word fear, I can remember that I had fear, but I can't feel fear from that state of consciousness. It's like one exists and one doesn't exist in the same, realm of consciousness.
Mhm. So what do you think this experience revealed to you about how the body lives?
Yes, the body is to me, and that's what I'm doing now. I still have the law practice, but I also have a coaching practice. I'm trained in equine gestalt coaching, and so I've learned a lot from my horses. But to me, the body is a lot like a horse. So and that was how I healed, was that I'd ridden young horses and had connection with them, and for a horse to connect with us and follow us, it has to trust us. And so I retrained my body by treating myself like my best horse, loving myself like my best horse. And so the body is a container. It's a holder for our consciousness. And I think we have envelopes of energy, and I call them the four lower bodies. And we've been talking a lot about the spiritual body. That one's the one that stays with us, most where with us wherever we go in our travels of, in and out of the body. The mental body is mostly prone to what we've developed here and now, that I've developed since I was born here. And then the emotional body, and I think that we can have trends, that follow us, and then there's the physical body. The physical body is the container, and I was actually very arrogant. I didn't really like my physical body. I didn't want a physical body, and, I thought that all my physical body was good for was carrying my head from my pillow to my desk so I could work. I was pretty bold and blunt and arrogant about the whole thing. This whole process has taught me how precious the body is, and that it is meant to, it's a place where we can learn and embody wholeness and our reason for being, that it is a gift. It is a sacred gift to have a body. And but the body has habits, you know. So think about, I told you about the experience of my near death experience. I could now go back and think about what it was like when I was afraid to go home and, my mom might choke me. And so now, as soon as I do that, I can embody and remember the fear in my body, the terror. When I do that, you notice how my arms went up, I'm tighter up here. My body goes into a pattern when we remember things. And so the body has habits. And I carried most of those habits forward with me because I never got to the core of them and went through the somatic release of what got stuck in my body. And the body also is, to heal, I needed to sleep. I had to learn how to, you know, I didn't eat bad, but I could eat better, and I could use food as a resource. I didn't like food because multiple reasons, but I have what's called mother hunger, in that my mom didn't give me from early on what I needed. I remember when a psychologist says, "Did you breastfeed?" And I just about puked. I was like, I wanted nothing from her. And so that also became what gets stuck in our body becomes how we relate to the world outside of us. So any type of food or coming in, I had a hate relationship with. I didn't want. But I also became always in my mind. When I was a kid, it was in my mind, wrestled with weight. After being sick, it became true. I carry, 30 or 40 extra pounds that I really would like to shed, which is harder at 63 than when I was an athlete. However, I had this relationship with my body that, I did talk to psychologists throughout all this. And at one point, she says, what really makes me nervous is the disdain that you have for your body. And I was like, oh, I had to ponder that. So I did not love my body. And the body is key to healing. We can, all four, we have to heal at the spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical level. But the physical body is extremely important. So eat right, sleep right, get exercise, but then think and feel right. And there has to be, to heal, I believe in my experience, some type of daily spiritual practice. Without invoking and bringing in, some consciousness that is higher than ours, that is filled with light and love, any type of healing or trying to change is like moving the chairs on the deck of the Titanic. We can move the chairs around, but we're not doing anything. We're not bringing anything new to help transform. Jung said we have to make the unconscious conscious. And, to be able to do that and then allow it to go through a transformation, we need something greater than us. And so I do have a very strong, many year spiritual practice where I do devotions and prayers and meditate. And I do think that's part of what it takes to actually move through transformational healing.
I have a love-hate relationship with food because I love food, right? And when I was younger, I was able to eat anything I wanted and it didn't matter. And I am a cake pastry type of person, plus candy. Like, I can't tell you. So I understand that. But recently, I've really understood something is my mom has passed away 3 months ago. And since my mother has passed away, I've been having this thing with food. Like, it's almost like, emotional eating. I think is actually what it's called. And it seemed like I'm always hungry, and I was never like that before. But I would be the person that would sit down and eat an entire pie, and I'm not even kidding because I was raised on that kind of cooking, kind of like a Southern style. My mother made a lot of biscuits and gravy and yummy, yummy, yummy food. And I, now 53, know that I cannot sustain that kind of food because it makes my body grow. So I understand that, and I know it's hard to be like that. However, I've never felt like you where I didn't want the food. I always feel like I want the food, and I feel like, "Why can't I just have it?" I do feel that way, like, I just wanna have that while I'm here without my body growing, but I can't do that
I have
anymore,
a
I'm older.
question. I have a question for you if you want.
Mhm.
I would
Excuse me.
if you if you're open to this, I would hold when you have that feeling of that you want it and I would imagine it's kinda coming in sideways. Yes, you don't have, like, a big hunger in your belly, it's more that you want it, right? Yeah. I would ask myself, what is behind that? What do I want that's behind that? There's you know, and then 'cause for all the years that I had pain, I actually did take pills. When they first wanted me to take it, I'm like, "Well, wait a minute. My mom's an alcoholic. I'm programmed to be an addict." And they said, "With as much pain as you have, you really have to do something to stop it, or else your whole body's gonna be locked in this process." And I said, "Okay." So I did take, pain pills for, I don't know, several decades. And when I stopped taking them, that's how I stopped. So I wasn't emotionally addicted to them. No, I was emotionally addicted to not feeling pain, but it wasn't quite the same as being addicted to painkillers. I was physically addicted to them. So there's this, I really pondered and observed all this thing with addiction because I've been so, observant of my mom. But when I had to finish, to get off of them, I would have to ask myself, what am I looking for? What do I need that when, the prompt is I want to take a pill, I have to, am I in pain? Well, yeah, and for me, it was very easy to have any emotional jaggedness turn into physical pain because I was already that was programmed that way. I'd programmed myself for life. But what was the emotion behind it? And I answered that question, and then I started feeling that, and then it made it much easier to change the habit and that desire. So, it's an observation and a question. What's going on behind this? And you'll get answers. When we ask ourselves questions and we're honest and open, we will get answers. So it'll come through our
I
inner
appreciate
wisdom
that.
or outwardly, yeah.
I appreciate that. It's a hard struggle, you know, um, because you were raised a certain way with food, and you didn't have to worry about it your entire life until now, till I get into my 50s. And you're probably right. I think that I was doing something with the food and just not knowing I was doing it. But now when you get into your 40s, 50s, the weight, starts to accumulate, and without your knowledge, it just kinda, "Oh my gosh, it's just there," right? Um, not that I'm not trying to say that you're like, weight is bad. Like, I look at myself and I'm a heavier girl, so, I don't really care, to be honest, in that way. But I do care about eating an entire pie. 'Cause I know that that's not good for me, but at the same time, it's like, I just love it, but I do understand and know why, because there is a longing, there is something there that I'm missing, and so I'm, like, feeding it to myself through this food.
Right.
Such a good observation, thank you for
The
that.
the other clue is that you said it directly in relationship to your mom's passing.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So there
Yeah,
yeah, but those are the clues that I would, gently follow.
I will. I appreciate that. What do you think most people misunderstand about burnout and pushing themselves so far? Because that's what I heard you do. So what do you think most people misunderstand about that?
I think most people, we're hooked to the outer world. I mean, it was very easy for me to hook to the outer world. Success, building a business, making money because we'd lost everything, championships, winning. It was really easy for me to be disconnected and associated with the outer things that, I thought was important in life because my go-to defense or mechanism to avoid the pain was disassociation. So I did not want to be connected to myself because I would feel the pain and the fear and the despair and all that. I think, I thought that was how everybody tells me that's how you get ahead. That's how you succeed in life. And it's simply not true. When I lay there dying, I did not think about any of that. I only thought about who and what I loved. And I think that's what most of us don't know. And we're unaware of that we each came here with a purpose or reason to live. We're on not all made to be the Dalai Lama or, you know, be somebody, even well known, but we do have something that only we can do. And that's our reason for life. And when we're doing it, then we live happily. So um, I now do more than I did before with less. And by that, I mean, I run 2 businesses right now. But I am very dedicated to, not working after 5. I do start early. I sometimes start working at 5 or 6 in the morning, but I will not work late in the day. I always go to bed at the same time, which is early, 7:30 or 8. And yeah, and I won't let that up because those are my boundaries. And I also am very dedicated to not running stress hormones. So even though I'm on a growth curve, I'm constantly challenging myself, learning new things and developing new skills. And I oftentimes feel uncomfortable because I'm not in my comfort zone. I'm literally still learning and growing and expanding. I'm also very dedicated to not running stress hormones. So that means I don't want to be dysregulated. I don't want to be in fight, flight, fear, fawn, any of those things where I'm not in my core. And so I think what the greatest misunderstanding is that inside each of us, when we get still, going back to your observation that I needed to slow down, when I get still and I actually can live in life being still inside and being quiet and moving centered, that is the gold. That is the reason for being here. And when we live like that, it makes me available to do much more. I trust my intuition. I still argue litigation cases. I still have to do hard work, but I can tell you that I'm in flow much more of the time. And when I work from flow and love, it makes everything in life easier. And I'm very, very happy to be here. So I went from a person who lived most of my life not really sure. In fact, I was pretty sure I got sent to the wrong place. Now I love it. I am very, very happy to be here, and I love having the opportunity to fulfill my reason for being, and which that is to spark a revolution for wholeness, one heart at a time, as a way to transform the world. And I think that, and it's each, note that I can't change anyone else. I can change myself. And so each day I live that, and each day gets better. And it's amazing because as the outer world seems to get more chaotic, I am focused on building my inner world, which is calm and at peace and a place of serenity and love and light. And I actually believe that that's the way that we have the paradox. We can change the outer world to the place we dream of.
I absolutely couldn't agree more. I also spend a lot of time, uh, building and basically reflecting on my life, and, um, I feel the exact same thing. When your inner world is changed, it seems like your outer world is a lot more together. If I was to ask you, where do we go when we die? What would you say?
Hmm.
Just in your opinion.
Yeah. In my opinion and experience, we go to a different a different vibration. I mean, it isn't in this time and space. I mean, that whole construct was nowhere near where I existed when I was out of my body in that tube of light. So, I think that makes healthy to understand. I think there's wrinkles, there's layers and there's wrinkles of being, and that when we no longer have a body, I mean, who knows if I left my body for, a minute, a second, there is no time or space. But that showed me that we can exist in a different realm, in a different vibration, almost even simultaneously when we have a body. When we no longer have a body, I actually think we're not guaranteed that we go to that great an elevation. I think what we're guaranteed is that when we leave our body, we're going to go to a place similar to that where we've already been living. If you remember from Ghost, there's a show where that bad guy got hit by the car, and when he left, it was, like, horrible. They had these birds, and black birds, sweeping down. You're like, "Oh, geez, I don't wanna go where he goes." But he was a criminal, and he's trying to hurt people and stuff, and I think that that's an example that if we live on Earth in a and we practice our life in a place that's not uplifting, and and we just because we die doesn't mean that we get elevated. I think when we leave our body, we go to a similar place to how we've existed. I think in the near death experience, I was granted, you know, a dispensation to feel. I had never felt that before. So to say that I walked out of my body into some place I'd been, no. I think that was the blessing of it for me. And I spend my time trying to make sure that I create a consciousness that is congruent with what I experienced when I was out of my body.
Yeah, I'm hearing like more conscious living, intentional living. In your opinion, do you think that it's in our consciousness that we create this place that we might go because of how we were living here on Earth?
I do think we have some. It's a little bit different, a nuance in that how we live here, the habit of how we exist, the and remember everything is a vibration. So the vibration that we live in here, creates the the pathway to where we go next. There is something greater than us, and I don't wanna, name it, because when we name it, we start splitting apart about what we think about spirituality. So I prefer to talk in really broad terms so that I don't lose somebody who has they call what's greater than us something different than I might call it. It's there, it is a reality, and that what's greater than us, there is grace, there is special blessings, and, that will also be part of where we go next. However, we have a big say in how we get lined up. I mean, even though I didn't wanna be here and I'd had all those horrible experiences, I also started after that first time that I was so sick and could have died, I started a spiritual practice at that time, so I was 23. So by the time I'm 51, I have all those years of a pretty steady daily practice. I may have missed a day or 2 here and there, but it was a half hour to an hour and a half of a spiritual practice. So I had created a pipeline of my focus on something greater, on my way of invoking oneness and devotion to God. And I had, sustained that on a daily basis. So I had that as a avenue to help me to go to that next place. So I think that all of those things together help create, but there is grace, and there are things much greater than what we have control of in our human consciousness.
You must have been, or maybe you weren't. Did you ever think like, "Oh my gosh, I'm out of my body." Like that means something. I'm not this body in this bed. This is pain in this bed. You know, did you ever go through that whole talk with yourself?
No, because I remember, again, my number 1 skill up until then was disassociation. So, remember, I promised God I would get in my body. I don't think I was really in my body for much of my life. Now, when I did sports, when I was shoeing horses and all that, but much of how I lived was disconnected, disassociated. And so it makes sense in looking backwards, that the reason I promised I had to get into my body was that was key to healing. I am more in my body now than ever. So, maybe when I leave it next time, and, then maybe that will be a difference. But until then, until now, I never really got into my body. I was reluctant. And note, I was born a twin, and I was born feet first, and I was unexpected because in the 60s, my mom, we lived so rural that she signed up for a time to have uh, her pregnancy, started artificially so that she could be there in time because we lived several hours from the hospital. Well, they didn't know she was gonna have twins. So my twin brother came out, and then I'm still left in there, and the doctor started to leave, and the nurse said, "You better get back here, there's another one." And he pulled me out by my feet, and I swear there was a part of me that was still mad at him. And so I was reluctant to come into embodiment, and I really didn't come into embodiment and really open my heart and really fully embrace it until after the near-death experience.
That is very telling. A twin. I always think there's something with twins. One twin was flying out like happy to be here, but not the other. The other was like, I'm not sure about this world. I'm not sure about this woman. I'm not sure about anything.
Yeah.
But okay, I'll try it. Right?
Yep.
Do you fear death now? And what would you say if you were sitting next to someone who was facing the end and ready to transition?
I do not fear death as I'm sitting here in a very calm space. During COVID, you know, I caught myself, one morning when I was doing my prayers, it's like, "Oh my god, I'm scared." It's like, "You already died. What are you scared of?" So, I think that all of us have a a physical fear. I mean, our bodies have a consciousness too, and in my body consciousness, it still doesn't wanna give up living. So I do have that, and I can be aware of it, and I can hold hands with it and step above it. So, but I don't fear death. I mean, at the core of my being and my consciousness, I'm very aware that, I hope that this time when I go home, I can say, I accomplished my reason for being, and I'm home. If somebody is close, and I have had those opportunities, there's I would first and foremost, I think it's important if we have that opportunity to be really still and calm inside ourselves because our nervous systems learn from each other. And to be able to have a good transition, I really think it takes being really centered and anchored in who we are, which actually for many people is easier at that time because all the other stuff has kind of fallen away. That's just really truth. And I have shared and I would share again that, it's not the end. It you're it's you're in it's a transition, and it's okay, yeah, you have to feel the things that you feel, but keep your heart and your eye on where you're going, and and then if I knew them well enough, I would pick from their language what that meant to them so that because I wouldn't wanna use what I experienced may not be how they experience the world, so I would try to talk long enough that I would get an idea of what they think, and then I would help them aim towards that. And I think that's one of the most loving thing we can do for anyone is to be with them when they're making the transition, to love and support them, and to hold our consciousness and our being so that they're able to, when they leave the body, to kind of hit the target of where they're going next, which is a place filled with light and love. But I think it's hard. It's hard to separate out from our body and what we're habitually used to. And I think that in the Tibetan Book of the Dead and other, different cultures, this transition of leaving the body is some ways as hard are more dicey than being born into the body. So it's a time where we really need our friends and loved ones to love and support us and do extra prayers and devotions so that we have what it takes to gracefully move from what we're used to and move on to where we go next.
Hertha, are there practices or tools that have helped you stay aligned with what you experienced on the other side here? Some of the guests probably would love to know, how is it that you come back with all this knowledge, and how you stay so aligned in your daily life?
The most important practice is the devotions. I do prayers in the morning and I borrow from multiple different religious traditions. I do the rosary, I sing bhajans, I do decrees, which are the science of the spoken word, and I invoke light and love through that. And I use, they say that when you pray, 50% of the your prayer depends on your vision, your sight, so it's using the mental body to hold a vision. And I'm still working all that, even though I've been doing it for 40 some years, I'm still a beginner. Every day I have to start again at before my altar. That's really important. But the next thing is to practice not getting in a emotional run. I used to go on emotional runaways because I had the trauma response. And so I would hear something, I would feel something, and then, I'm off. And I was fierce. Now, I never hurt anybody, but, being a trial attorney, well, I'll tell the story another way. I ran for office and the other side took out ads against me and I was trained to spin. And I told my husband, I said, I'm going to write back and I'm going to show them. He says, don't fight with the pig. You both get muddy and the pig will like it. And I'm like, oh, I'd like it. Let's go. So I have to be I have now a habit of not getting entangled, but whenever I allow myself to run those intense emotions and it doesn't happen very often anymore, but to go on an emotional runaway, that takes me a long time for my system to get back to center and normal. And you could say, well, they made me mad. No, I chose to do that. So I'm responsible for what I feel. And I would say that's also the most important thing, to be aware of what we're feeling and thinking and doing whatever we can, on top of doing our morning devotionals so that we don't have a daily habit of losing our center and, giving it all up. Now we can start again and we could build it back, but it's like literally it's like it's energy and it's like throwing money around. I mean, we wouldn't all run around if we wanted to save money and throw $100 bills around. If you want to create a container where you're able to walk on the earth and contain light and love and to be a person who helps, change the world to the place we dream of, you can't be throwing it away with going on emotional runs that really don't help anything except for, for the moment we think we feel better, but we also think we feel better if we're an alcoholic and we drink a fifth. You don't. In the moment you think you do, but it's really not helpful. It's bad for our bodies and our beings.
Beautiful saying. I love it. Hertha, can you share about your services, offerings, or any published works that you may have, and where people can find and connect with you?
Sure, I do have a book. My book is called The Alchemy of Resilience, and you can find it on Amazon, and it's under my name, Hertha Lund. And I'd love for you to read it. And if you like it, please rate it and do a testimonial because that's really important for other people to be able to find the book. I have a website and it's Hertha, Hertha, at Hertha-Lund. That's the hyphen .com. So Hertha at Hertha-Lund.com. And there you'll see that I offer equine gestalt coaching. I have retreats. I have 6 planned for this summer, and I'm looking for those people who feel called to come. Please look at that. I have the Path to Wholeness retreat. I have a Mother Hunger retreat. I'm going to make one of them for the people, for those of us who just want to find peace, inner peace during this outer chaos. And those are times where in all the people who've come, I've done like 10 or 12 over the last 2 or 3 years, say it's life-changing. So I would love for if anybody feels that they're interested, and on that website, you'll find a place where you can call me. I really want to talk to people before they come so that we're sure that it's the right thing, right next step for you. Next fall, I have a Zoom group, Wholeness Path to Wholeness Zoom group that I run for 6 months. We meet every week for 2 hours, and that's a place where it's a great container. This last one has been amazing. The women are so amazing, and they've learned from each other and from the what I've put together, and I will do some Gestalt practices over the phone. And then if you come to that group, then you also get um, a reduction in what it costs to come to the retreat. So you're set up to be able to really practice on a weekly basis and have support to be able to make changes in how you exist so that you can embody more wholeness, love, and light. And then in the near term, I'm soon to be offering on May 19th, and it will be on my social media. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and for there, I have a personal under my name, but I also uh, run under Four Horses for Wholeness. So it's FOUR horses, FOR wholeness. And we've had some of the recent postings they're not quite viral, but they've gone really big because I talk about healing, but I share pictures of the horses and what happens. And so that I will be doing that first free workshop on May 19th. And on my website, there is a freebie. You just have to click on it to get it. And it is the touchstones of transformational healing. It's a free masterclass. So those are the things that I offer. And I would just love, love, love to be able to work with anybody. If you have any inspiration in your heart, check out and meet with me. And, maybe all you need is a phone call. I'd love that too. I am here and back into embodiment to share what I've learned as a means to spark a revolution, your heart, my heart, one at a time, so we can change the world. I am aware that what I came back with was the gift to being able to language the inner moves of healing. And so I dedicate myself to that. Lastly, I am an inspirational speaker, and I have that on my webpage. And if you have a place where my type of talk, the one I'm giving now most recently is about how going through the portal of fear is how we find our way to wholeness. And I'll be giving that talk in Jacksonville, Florida, May 26th, I think. So I'm very busy sharing what I've learned. And again, I would just love to hear from anybody if you have any spark in your heart, reach out to me, and I would love to work with you and see how together we can make this world into the place we dream of.
Hertha, thank you so much for your service. From my heart to yours. We are at the last question, and that is everyone returns with a truth. What truth did you return with that you would want humanity to know right now?
The truth that I returned with that I want humanity to know is that each one of us plays an integral part into what happens in the world, the outer world. It is not being done to us. And that me pursuing our path to wholeness is key to to what happens next. It's self-responsibility, it's self-accountability, and it's worth it. I mean, when we leave our bodies, we're gonna be much happier, based on my experience, have lived as much as we can to find our inner wholeness. All the outer stuff will fall into place once we find the inner wholeness, and when we do that, we are starting a revolution for wholeness that will change the world, and that is my most important message is, we are not victims. We are not being controlled by all these outer things. We can change it, but we have to be willing to change ourselves first and to move through transformational healing. So that is the most important message that I returned with.
That was like music to my ears. Hertha, your story is a powerful reminder that even in our breaking, There is something beyond waiting for us. I want to thank you so very much for sharing your story, your honesty, your courage, and the light that you brought here to the return today.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor and a joy and an inspiration to be here with you, MJ.
Thank you so very much. And to all those watching or listening, sometimes the life we're trying to hold together is the very thing asking to be released. And what waits on the other side of that might be more love than we've ever allowed ourselves to feel. Thank you for watching. And until next time, stay open, stay curious, and keep returning to the truth within you.